Alrighty. I always joke about people saying everybody has a really good signing day, and I've never heard a coach get up and say that they didn't have a really good signing day and a really good effective signing day and address the needs of their team and all those things. But I feel like I'm the cliche here today. I feel like we did that. I thought today went really well for us. It's not over yet. It's obviously pretty unique time having an early signing period that inevitably now becomes the real signing day. What used to be February, the first Wednesday in February, now we're mid-December. So it's interesting that way. We're not done yet, I don't think. I think there's still some things to come. But inevitably, it's I think a credit to the staff, not only the coaches but the recruiting department that in identifying the players, not only from a skill set standpoint, but from a character standpoint, from a football IQ standpoint, from finding the right mesh on our team to go where we want to go from a cultural standpoint. I think all of which were big. I think clearly we addressed some pressing needs that we felt like were on our roster. Clearly, kind of getting both quarterbacks on board were big for us. Addressing some needs on the offensive line, addressing some needs on the defensive front, and then clearly addressing some needs in the defensive secondary. So all in all, the day's gone well. I like the mix of the guys that we have. As I've said early on about got to have big humans, and you got to be able to play big up front, and I think we addressed that. But I do think we addressed some of the needs in the secondary, which are important for us moving forward. And that's not to neglect the other positions where we got players, but clearly those were areas where we needed some numbers and we needed bodies, but we needed quality, not just quantity. I'm glad that we didn't settle. So I think there was a time earlier in the year when there was a lot of talk that we didn't have enough linemen and what were we going to do. And I mentioned then that we didn't want to settle. We wanted to recruit the best players that fit us the best. We stuck to our guns, and for the most part, it worked out. You don't win every battle in recruiting. You don't get every kid that you want in your program. You just try to get the majority of those, and I think that we did that. So, all in all, pretty good day. There's a bunch of guys I could talk about. I'm sure you guys will ask, so we'll open it up.
When you got here, I know one of the first things you did was starting to recruit Quinn Ewers, and then he goes to Ohio State. Can you kind of take us through the process from January 2nd last year to him re-entering the portal, just basically your whole recruitment with Quinn and also with Malik as well?
Yeah. We're lucky. We got two great quarterbacks, and Quinn and Malik are both fantastic players. And I think the initial thought is, well, how do you get both these guys in the same class? Well, in essence, they're not now. Quinn is really being a transfer. He's kind of a class ahead. He's really in the 21 class, and Malik's in the 22 class. And I was telling the story of really 2016 season at Alabama going into 2017 when Jalen Hurts was the SEC Player of the Year, and I go on a flight to Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii, and I go recruit Tua Tagovailoa. Then I get on a plane and I fly to Florida and I go recruit, Mac Jones. They both show up at Alabama, and in that same quarterback room was Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones. All of those three guys won championships in their own right, all of which got all the great accolades, and now today they're 3 of 32 men in the world that are starting quarterbacks and face of their franchise in the NFL. And that's no different than when I had Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, and Matt Castle in the same quarterback room. And so we believe in our ability to develop the quarterback, and then I think that both these young men saw that. Both of their recruiting process was different for us. Quite frankly, with Quinn and Malik, I saw them at a very young age. I went and saw both those guys when they were younger in their high school career. Quinn, when he originally had decommitted from Texas after I'd already started to recruit him, I think we were one of the first teams when I was at the other school that was kind of in the mix. And then he decided to go to Ohio State. Then ultimately I ended up getting the job here. And we had a few conversations, but I think he, in his mind, going to Ohio State was what he wanted to do. And I respected him for wanting to do that. Then obviously, reclassifying and going early and maybe not having the experience he wanted to have. And our timing of where we were, of really wanting to take 2 quarterbacks. I think there was no secret. We were very upfront and honest with Malik about that we wanted to take 2, whether it was 2 high school or 1 high school, 1 transfer. We definitely wanted to take 2, and it just worked out in a way where Quinn became available. He went through the process, and I credit him for that. He didn't just jump from Ohio State to Texas. He went through the process in his own mind to see if this was the best fit for him, and ultimately that's what he believed, and we believe as well. On the same token, I give a lot of credit to Malik for being committed to us for an extended period of time, having a tremendous senior season, winning a state championship, and then him believing in his, why he chose Texas and him sticking with us. So in the end, we got 2 really good quality players and quarterbacks and leaders and men that gives us an opportunity to kind of build towards this future of where we think this program can go.
You told us back in July or August you were asked about roster construction, and you said you wouldn't have exactly constructed the roster the way it was then. Is this the first step really in getting it the way you want it on the offensive and defensive lines on that front? And then second, how much more Sark after dark? How much was that on purpose to get some of the guys laid and create something that was a little momentum going into this?
I think so from a roster structure standpoint. I think you have to have depth up front. And I think you have to be willing at that time, then you have time to develop these players up front. And, we believe in being big and playing big at the line of scrimmage. And so to kind of get really 8 guys on the front of defense, essentially 7 to 8 guys, and to this point, 5 offensive linemen, and we're building them. You can kind of see the body structure of what they're about and the talent level that they possess. That's kind of where we want to go, right? I mean, we have a pretty simple formula. When you're really big up front on offense and you can run the ball, and then you're fast on the perimeter and you have to play, create space for those guys, that's a good marriage. That's a good mix for us. I think defensively, when you're big up front and you can negate the run with your people up front and put pressure on the quarterback with your down people, that allows you to mix coverages and do things. But you got to have the athleticism and the length at corner, in my opinion, in this day and age of college football, where you can play press man, you can play off coverage, you can play trap coverage. You can be really physical against some of the perimeter screens that get thrown in this day and age of college football. I think we identified that. I mean, you see the corners that we're bringing in are long, physical players. So we feel good about that. The Sark after dark thing, quite frankly, is I just think that's when these kids operate now. They operate at night, and I try to get to their space where they're comfortable. And sometimes, you don't get decisions out of them until into the evening, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, sometimes 12:30 at night. It's probably why I'm tired today. You kind of got to get into their world to find their comfort zone so that they can make the best decision for them.
Steve, 2 questions. First one, though, is you were very good about staying focused at the end of the season, that this is focused on your message and what you wanted to get across and the narrative you wanted to tell. And I wonder how much did that play into just how this all unfolded? You have never wavered despite how the season went. How much did that help?
Well, I just, I believe in being consistent. If you want your team to play consistent and you want your staff to be consistent in what they do and how they coach and your approach, I have to be consistent. And I've said this all along. I think teams ultimately take on the personality of their head coaches. And, one thing for me, getting a third opportunity at doing this, I wanted to be a really consistent head coach with my approach to how I did things. And whether it was our day-to-day operations, whether it was our style of play, whether it was our recruiting messaging, whatever that is, I think when you're consistent with something, that reinforces it and that gives it a chance to drive whatever your messaging is home. And whether that's me not wavering, whatever it is, it was just a constant reminder myself to stay consistent with our messaging of what I was trying to get instilled in our program, but also from a recruiting standpoint that, you know, if that was one of the keys to this in this recruiting class and having the success that we had today, well, that's great, because that's part of why I did what I did, was just I didn't want to be jumping from one thing to the next, and the messaging is one thing one week and something different the next, or to recruits, you know, one week I'm talking about something, the next week is something else. Of just being consistent so that they knew what they were getting, you know, because ultimately they're choosing us. We're not choosing them, you know, and recruiting this isn't the NFL draft, right? I mean, we've got to pitch our product, which is the University of Texas, and we've got a tremendous product, but ultimately they got to buy it. And my opinion was, you know, just if we could be as consistent as we could be, that ultimately they would buy into what we were doing.
And secondly, totally unrelated, we haven't talked to you since this Clark Field initiative came out and this Horns with Heart thing came out. What's your take on, number one, the amount of money that these groups are talking about, and that they're claiming that they're going to be paying players through NIL?
Well, here's this. NIL is real. I don't think at this point of the game anybody is surprised by what's going on to some capacity. And if it's not these entities, it's another entity that ultimately is going to, you know, give players opportunities to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. And, you know, for these two entities to form, to allow our players to you know, profit off of that in a good cause, you know, I'm all for it. I think, you know, as I said before, our players put in a lot of time, effort, and work. And for a long time, I think people have thought players should be paid for their name, image, and likeness. And now here's the opportunity to do so. And we're in a capacity here at the University of Texas in this amazing city in Austin, to where there's more opportunities available to our players. And it doesn't take away from their ability to perform on the football field and in the classroom. I'm all for it. And so these opportunities have presented themselves, and I think, you know, some of our guys are taking advantage of it.
Hey, Coach, you know, Texas hasn't always won the battles for the big name in-state guys, as you're probably really familiar with. I'm kind of curious of how much of an emphasis that you guys kind of placed on making sure you win the battles for those elite guys. And I'm also curious if you can maybe share the vision that you shared with recruits that was able to get so many of these, especially the elite guys, to buy in.
Yeah, I wasn't hung up on so much of was he a big name or not. It was more of, do they fit us, and do they fit the need that we had? Because clearly, like I said earlier, we're not going to win every battle. You know, you're not going to go get every kid you recruit. I don't have enough scholarships available to get every kid that I would want to be on our team. We're just making sure that we had enough balance in you know, if we had 2 or 3 scholarships at a certain position, well, we better recruit 5 or 6 guys at that position, because the reality of it is you're probably going to hit, if you hit 500, that's a heck of a day, you know, of recruiting a position. So, you know, I think relationships are a big key to what we did. You know, I credit our staff for doing that we really tried to develop the relationships, and a lot of these relationships got formed 11 months ago, you know, when I first got the job. And there was a lot of Zoom calls. This is pre-players getting on campus here in June. I mean, there was a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of FaceTimes, where you just try to get to know the individual, their families, their mentors, whoever that may be. And then when we were able to get face-to-face with them, it made things start to become a reality. But the reality of it is, it was really relationship-based, you know, and we really had 3 core things that we felt like every kid we recruited needed to have. And then once we narrowed it down for them to have those things, and then they had the skill set to match it, I mean, we were all in. And the 3 things were really pretty simple, right? Are they an innate competitor, right? Do they really, truly compete at their core in everything that they do? Do they have a high football IQ, right? Do they really get the game and understand the game and the nuances of the game as it flows to them? And then are they, you know, internally prideful human beings? Because when you're prideful, that means you understand what love means. You know how to accept love. You know how to give love. And love is very powerful, and that's what can create a really good locker room for you. So those 3 were kind of prerequisites to what we did. Then we dug into height, weight, speed, strong, and all those kinds of things.
Steve, I guess the old adage is the closer you play to the ball, the harder it is to play as a young player. But with all
I've never
these,
heard that one, but
okay,
I'll ride with you.
With all these young offensive and defensive linemen, do you have any idea? I mean, ideally, you'd probably like to redshirt them, but how many do you think can be impact right away? And can you tell us anything about Gary Patterson and the possibility of him joining your football operation?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't try to put a ceiling on our guys based on age or, experience. We try to give everybody that blank slate, and we try to give them that opportunity to show what they are and grow and how quickly they can develop and learn and use the fundamentals and techniques that we're trying to do. I've never shied away from playing young players. When I was at Alabama, I know we started a true freshman offensive lineman our first year there. When I was at USC, I think we started at sometimes 3 true freshman offensive linemen in the same game. So, if you're talented and you work hard and you understand the core principles of the offense or defense and you use the proper fundamentals and techniques, you earn that opportunity to play. And, I think we saw that some this year at some specific positions. So time will tell. Obviously the quicker they can absorb the information coming in, and then it's like a sponge. You take it in and then you squeeze it. And when you squeeze it, does it come out looking the way you want it to look? Then they give themselves the best chance. But I've never been one to put a ceiling and say, hey, you're coming to redshirt. No, you're coming to compete, and we're going to give you the opportunity to compete. And then, when the dust settles here as we work our way through training camp closer to the first game, we'll start to have an idea. In this day and age, more so than ever in college football, because of the 4-game rule, you have opportunity to actually play these guys some too, because some guys might play a little better in game than maybe they practice. So all that adds up to we're going to let all these guys go for it. We're going to coach the heck out of them, whether it's on the field, in the classroom, whatever that is, and see how far they can take it. The thing with Gary, I've got obviously a great deal of respect for Gary. I think it's 24 years or something like that at TCU. Has done a fantastic job. Really built that program into what it is and to make it one of the more desirable jobs in the country. And I give him a lot of credit for that. And I know that, he's trying to figure out, in what capacity does he want to continue this profession. We have not made any determination on if we'd want him here or if he'd want to be here. But the reality is there's definitely a level of respect for the job that he's done at TCU.
Hey, Steve, when you recruited Quinn to come here, sitting down with him, you knew that he had decommitted here. How important is it maintaining those relationships? Because he's going through a tough time because he thought he'd play up there. So how important was that in getting him here? How'd you sell him on it?
Well, I think, in this day and age, I don't know who benefits when you burn a bridge at the end of recruiting. And the transfer portal is real. Guys are jumping everywhere. I mean, I think there's over 1,000 kids in the portal right now, which is an insane number of players in the portal, with only, I think, not even 30% of those having found a school yet. So it's a lot of kids kind of floating around out there trying to find somewhere to go. I just maintain a good relationship. I didn't overthink it. I just really just said, hey, when he decided when he decommitted to come to go to Ohio State and I was at Alabama, I wished him luck. If anything changes, give me a call. When I got the job here and we had a little bit of dialogue, and then he decided to stick with what he was doing at Ohio State, I wished him luck. If anything changes, give us a call. We're here. And then that's what happened. I just think that when you treat people well and you're authentic and you're transparent and you're honest, and you don't burn bridges at the end because, I think one of the mistakes sometimes we can get into is we get into our feelings. When you get in your feelings and you don't get the kid the way you want it, that you thought you should have got, and for whatever reason he chose to go somewhere else, coaches can make the mistake of getting in their feelings and saying some things that maybe they shouldn't say. And I've always just tried to stay authentic and true to the relationship itself, and that's what we did. And so when this whole thing came full circle, I think it was natural to kind of resume those conversations that we were having earlier on. And like I said, this was not a slam dunk. He and his family went through the process. They looked at a few different places, and I'm sure they talked to more than that. And we just try to present what the opportunity was here for him, and the relationship-based and the development-based, process of which we've done historically. We've all got our kind of history of coaching players at a position. I've been fortunate to have coached some pretty good quarterbacks in my time that have gone on to have good success not only in college but in the NFL. And clearly those are some of his aspirations. So I think that worked well for him.
Coach Sarkisian, with the majority of the commits and the signees being from the state of Texas, can you talk about the inroads that you had in the alliances you were able to make with Texas high school coaches and their programs that allowed you to be successy this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying, the high school coaches here in the great state of Texas, they are football, right? They eat, drink, sleep football. To see the passion that a lot of the towns have in the state of Texas for their local high school football team. I was at a state championship game a couple weeks ago, or not a state championship, but a playoff game a couple weeks ago. And the two schools, I think, didn't have but maybe 150 kids at most in each school. But at the game, there was 11,000 people at this game. I think put everything into perspective for me on just the value that's placed on football in this state. But going all the way back to when I got hired, I tried to make it a point to call 2 to 4 coaches every day. And I just kind of did that every day and tried to make those connections. I think the hiring of Chris Gilbert from Lancaster High in Dallas to be part of our staff as our director of high school relations, I think that was really helpful because he allowed me to connect with certain people. I think going down to San Antonio here this summer and connecting with a lot of those coaches there because we weren't allowed to go out in the spring was really helpful. And then even now, just in the last couple weeks when we were allowed to get out on the road, of when I had my time to try to stop in and see as many coaches as I could, which is what we'll continue to do here in January, I thought was really effective too. So all of which, these guys are really influential people. They're great coaches. I mean, the football in the state is really good. They're great coaches. These players have been trained and taught really well. And hopefully we can benefit from that.
On your left, Danny. Steve, you've addressed Sark After Dark. Could you address Flip Miss and kind of getting those guys, Ethan, Xavier, and Terrence on board late?
Yeah, I mean, to me, recruiting doesn't stop. And in this day and age, it doesn't stop once you get them on your roster, right? Because guys can leave, which is crazy. But the reality of it is, we just keep recruiting, and we keep how much better can we make the relationship? Making sure that they know every aspect of our program about us as people, and that we learn about them. And I give our coaches a lot of credit. Nobody backed off of it, whether it was Terry Joseph and his relationship and connection with Terrence Brooks and his family, whether it was Jeff Banks and his relationship with Xavier Bryce and his family, whether it was the relationship with Coach Milwee and Coach PK, with Coach Dodge and Coach Salazar, and ultimately to get Burke on board at Westlake. It's about relationships, and it's about connection, and it's about just staying the course and being honest with people, because sometimes we may not be able to offer a kid a scholarship early on because of certain number of scholarships offered at that position already, and we only have so many spots available. But yet we've got so many available at another spot, and if some things change at another position, that may open up a scholarship. Now we can come back to a young man that maybe is at a different position that we hadn't offered, but because we have a good relationship with them and we're authentic and honest with them, that you have a better chance to maybe circle back in late, which I think was some of what happened here. But clearly those are 3 great players that I think will have bright futures for us.
Steve, I want to come back to the NIL for a second. You said the NIL is real, and Texas is one of those programs that's got these third-party groups, stepping up with NIL programs. But in the Texas case, the Clark Field guys and the Horns with Heart guys, they just happen to launch and grab headlines while you're out trying to close the deal with some elite recruits, and you're coming off a struggle of a season. Did you know those announcements were coming, and how much do you think that influenced late decisions or tipped the balance in your favor for today?
I really didn't know. I didn't know where this thing would go. I knew we had players on our team that had NIL deals, and some of them were more successful than others. I know we had some guys on our team sign NIL deals that halfway through the season were like, "This is a burden. I wish I hadn't done this deal." That's part of growing up and signing contracts and making commitments to having to do those things. Clearly, the direction of NIL and where it goes, I don't know, and to what capacity this thing's going to go to. And my concern has always been with NIL is that your locker room can get kind of disengaged where you have a handful of players that are making a bunch of money and you've got the rest of your roster that isn't. In the NFL, everybody gets a paycheck, right? Some guys may make $20 million a year. Some guy might make $500, but everybody's getting a paycheck every week. And my concern in college football, and it still is to this day, is that we're starting to, in some way, shape, or form, kids are starting to get much bigger deals, and there's other guys in that locker room or in that meeting room at the same position that aren't getting any. And that's the imbalance that I'm concerned about. So hopefully as we navigate this thing and move forward, that we're just conscientious of that. And so, whatever deals come up, when they come up, how they pop up, I don't know. That's out of our control. I'm not the ones that are trying to put these things together or how they work. But the reality of it is real. Like, this is real. And I think every time we kind of watch the news and see something for a new guy with NIL, we're thinking, wow, that's a lot. That can't be. It's a reality. It is now becoming a reality and a part of college football, and I'm sure college basketball and baseball and other sports as we navigate through this thing. And so every day it's kind of wrapping your head around what does this look like and where are we headed? And I don't think any of us really know. I know when this all dropped in the summer, I said it to you guys then. I don't know where this is headed. I really don't know. But these are the rules that are in place, and if you have to kind of play by the rules. And so if our players have opportunities to take advantage of NIL deals that are presented to them, that again, don't hinder them from being a great football player, don't hinder them from being a great student, I'm all for it. I mean, it's a chance to make a living to some capacity off of their name, image, and likeness, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
Coach, I have two for you. The first one is, did you guys give any thought in the recruiting process of getting guys that will be able to compete in the SEC once Texas goes and gets there in a couple of years? And the second one is, do you have any unique stories about recruiting on the road, any of these guys, something unique or fun you would like to share?
Yeah. Part of it is how we think roster-wise is maybe a little bit SEC-oriented. Clearly, we want to be big up front. And I think that was a clear point of emphasis to what we were doing and how we were doing it, whether it was on the offensive or defensive line. That's a physical conference. We like to play a physical brand of football regardless of who we're playing. So I think that kind of went hand in hand with our approach naturally to potentially what could be down the road. My first home visit, I'll say this, is I probably have to think about what was my first home visit at the University of Texas. It was Brennan Thompson. I went to Spearman, Texas, that first day I could go out. And it was fun because, Spearman's not the biggest town in Texas. I can say that. But we got in there and we had a lot of fun, and it was like we went to his house, his grandparents' house. We went to the school. We went to the coffee shop, and we were downtown, and I don't think we went through a street light to get all that done. We were just kind of right there to get it all happen. But you see, what I learned was Brennan is a close-knit, family-oriented kid, and that's the pride in his community. That's the pride in his family. But sometimes you don't know that and you don't learn that until you actually get to see the kid in their own element. And so that was probably, one of the more memorable ones because it was the first one, and it made sense to me that okay, I really understand Brennan Thompson now more than I ever did after spending 3 or 4 hours with him in his hometown, and kind of what his world looks like growing up, and then what he's coming into at Austin, and how I can make his experience and his transition even better moving forward.
There are multiple reports out that Stan Drayton is taking the Temple job. I'm sure you know all about it, but what kind of blow is that to your staff for what he's done for you, and just what do you think he'll be like as a head coach? How good a coach is he?
First of all, if it works, I'm super excited for Stan. It's a great opportunity. You know, we all work extremely hard to progress in whatever our profession is. Ours happens to be coaching, and as you work through it and you're an assistant and you bounce around, there's a lot of moving in our profession. There's a lot of stress that gets put on our families and whatnot. So if he can get this opportunity, and that's something that's what he wants to do, wish him the best of luck, you know, and couldn't be more excited for him and his family. They're wonderful people. Stan's a great coach. You know, he's a really good leader of men. I think you see his coaching style in the way the running backs play. They play hard, they play tough, they play smart. And that's what he really instills in them on the football field, but as much of that is what he instills in them off the field. I think he raises young men to become men and to become better kind of citizens in society. And so he will be missed on that front. And it'll be, you know, the end of the day, you know, that creates another opportunity for us to go hire somebody else. And, you know, obviously the standard's been set for, you know, kind of what's expected in that room.
Sark, in terms of initial counters, I don't know if you want to get into publicly how many you plan on using or want to use, but that on top of, you know, the eligibility relief that's coming with the 7 guys in the portal that the NCAA is allowing, how has it been trying to construct a roster the way you want it, making this program more talented and trying to make all this math work?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know necessarily if we're trying to make the roster more talented or not. We're just trying to construct it in a way that fits what we like to do. And I think that's really important, you know, because I think we've got a lot of really good players on our roster, and now we're trying to bring in players to fit all of that to make sense. You know, it's when you think about it, what inevitably could ultimately come out of this is us signing or having 35 or 36 or so new scholarship players in our locker room next fall. And we get 85. So, you know, we're over a third of our team would be new. You know, we're closing in on, you know, almost 50% as you start to grow. And so what that looks like is we've got to do a great job, and myself, in the culture, and how do we bridge that gap, and how do we get these guys working together from the players that were here, the influx of the new players, and then how many of those would end up being mid-years, right, as it grows. I think right now we have 12 mid-years that'll be here in January. That number could go up here before the next 48 hours are done. But that's a nice bridge, because you have the players that have been in the program. You have kind of half or so, or half to a third of that class already here, and then the rest of them come in June. That gives us a chance to kind of bring them all together, because culturally that's one of the key components for us moving into next season.
What are some of the traits in Quinn that make him such a special quarterback prospect?
I think Quinn, like Malik, they both have great arm talent. You know, both these guys have big arms. Their physical stature, they're both big guys, which is really helpful. I think, you know, both guys, when you watch them play, have the unique ability to throw the ball from different arm angles, have the ability to throw the ball without their feet perfectly set in the pocket because they have the arm talent to get it done. And then the ability to extend plays. When things break down, their ability to make the plays, you know, off schedule down the field, create opportunities for you, not only in the short game, but to possibly create explosive plays. So he's a really good player. Quinn's a gifted guy who's put in a lot of work at his craft to get to this point. And hopefully we can do a good job of continuing to develop him to get him to where he wants to go.
Steve, I know you had a lot of player evaluation meetings and that kind of thing. What was the message to Hudson and Casey and Charles, the scholarship quarterbacks who are here now?
Yeah, that we were trying to bring 2 guys in, one of which would probably be a transfer. and that the job would be open. Same thing we said late in the season, the job would be open. We'll let the guys compete, but that there would be at minimum 2 new guys in that quarterback room, one of which would more than likely be a transfer.